Hi, I'm Ophi YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things. Despite that introduction, because it's just my normal one, this is not like an in-depth, thorough feminist investigation into It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I haven't read it. I have not read it. I'm sorry for making a video about it that's this long when I haven't read it, but I haven't read it and I really don't want to read it. There are lots of reviews for it online, both in other people's YouTube videos and in articles that I will be referencing in my video and linking in the description below. I mean, I could definitely be talked into reading it. If, like, a few of you were to voice that you wanted me to read it, I would probably read it for you. But I do know a lot of people have read it, and I'm going to be talking about discourse around it, the film adaptation especially, and discourse around the film adaptation, and I'm going to be talking about, like, the different angles of the drama that I've seen. I don't necessarily have, like, a clear stance in this one. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't even know if I'm saying her name right. I think I said Colleen earlier. Oh god. I should look it up. I gotta look it up. How do you say Colleen Hoover?
Colleen Hoover.
Colleen! Colleen! Okay, good. Yeah, Colleen. Okay, good. I'm relieved. I just looked it up. It's Colleen. I was right. So, I do not like Colleen Hoover. A lot of work just for that. I don't like her books. I'm not interested in reading things like her books, so I just have not read them. I haven't read things about them that have made me want to read them, especially while researching for this video. I have not yet seen the It Ends With Us movie. Once it's on streaming, I will, and especially if you all want me to read this book and make a video about it, we'll talk. Well, we could talk about that. Let me know in the comments. But I haven't seen that movie yet, because it just came out, and I haven't been to theaters since I saw Barbie, and that was the first time I had been to theaters since I saw Knives Out. But, okay. I do know that I've seen a few other creators talk about this and other Colleen Hoover books. My bestie is a bookseller, so I have kind of inherited their grudges against Colleen Hoover and James Patterson, without much needing to, like, firsthand see. You know what I mean? I feel like people who are watching who have worked at bookstores know what I'm talking about. So, again, I have not read It Ends With Us. I will if a bunch of you ask me to, but, like, we could just not. This video is made with the assumption that we could talk about It Ends With Us and just not read the book. So what I want to do is talk about the recent movie adaptation, and when I say recent, I mean very recent, like days ago at the time of me filming this. The press rollout about this movie has been interesting in ways that I have seen conflicting takes on Twitter about in the last week or so. I've been trying to stay abreast of the situation, and I've seen a lot of people ask for somebody to just explain, so that's why I'm here. Content warning off the top here, we're going to be talking about a movie based on a book about domestic violence. Discussions about that are going to be present throughout the video. Probably most of them can be skipped if you skip over the part where we are summarizing the book itself, because not a lot of the specifics really come up about this during the press tour about it, but, you know, still it's all part of the same conversation throughout. So if that doesn't feel like a topic that is going to be comfortable for you to watch a video about right now, I encourage you to just hold off. This video will be there when you feel like it. So the movie we're talking about today, It Ends With Us, came out on August 8th of 2024. It stars Blake Lively as the protagonist, a florist named Lily Bloom, which, like, I do have to say is some Wattpad shit, and Justin Baldoni as her initial love interest / domestic abuser, a man named Ryle. I see a lot of people clown on the name Ryle, and it does kind of sound like she just couldn't choose between Ryan and Kyle, but also, you know, while yes, it is kind of a silly name, and while I was reading the plot synopsis in a little bit, I kept saying Lyle when I would have to say Lily and Ryle close together. Nightmare. But, yeah, it's kind of a silly name, but also can't you just imagine, like, some young little non-binary kid walking up to you and being like, my name is Ryle? Like, would you laugh at them? I wouldn't laugh at them. I would be like, nice to meet you, Ryle. I will admit, though, it's odd for, like, a straight cisgender male love interest, which by all accounts, this Ryle seems to be. I'm pretty certain you already know this if you are watching this video, but Colleen Hoover is a huge deal in the romance novel and honestly, like, novel book publishing world in general right now. And It Ends With Us is the first of her wildly successful romance novels to be given a film adaptation. I imagine it absolutely is not going to be the last either. As I mentioned in the content warning, It Ends With Us is a book about domestic abuse. From what I've seen, Colleen Hoover always talks about it like her intention in writing a book about domestic abuse was like to be like an advocate and like speak out for victims of domestic violence. That's even just like in the Wikipedia career section when it talks about It Ends With Us. I am not speaking directly to exactly how well she did in that. Like, I mean, I'm telling you what some other people think about it, and I am telling you some of my initial perceptions, but what I mean by that is, like, because I think that this book probably was not handled in the way that it should have been, don't mean to say that I don't think that she or anybody else could do good things with the intention of writing a book to advocate for victims of domestic violence, right? And in order to talk about the book, I wanted to give you a quick synopsis of it. I grabbed this not from regular Wikipedia, but from the Colleen Hoover fan Wikipedia, because I think that is a hilarious place to do research for videos, so I do often. But in this case especially, it feels worth noting because it is a fan wikia. Like, it might not be completely accurate, and again, I have not read the book. I read this, and I have in the past watched other people's videos about it. If it's a bad synopsis, though, like, we're in it together, because I don't remember what other people explained the plot as being, because I've more recently read this synopsis. So let's read it together.
The novel opens with Lily, a young college graduate living in Boston, on a rooftop, clearing her thoughts after her father's funeral. There, she encounters Ryle Kincaid, a resident surgeon. The couple has chemistry, but it becomes clear that they both have different aims when it comes to relationships. Ryle only wants a casual fling, while Lily is looking for a relationship. The two part ways, but meet again 6 months later when Lily hires Ryle's sister, Alyssa, to work at the flower shop she has recently opened. Lily and Ryle's attraction to each other only increases the more they happen upon each other, until Ryle decides to explore a relationship with Lily, despite his earlier reluctance. Throughout this time, Lily finds herself revisiting her past and longing for closure with the death of her father, who was abusive towards her mother. To find it, she rereads old journals that she wrote when she was 15. Those journals narrate her encounter with Atlas Corrigan, a homeless 18-year-old boy. As a teen, Lily was moved to help him when he was without a home and a family, and they became close when he supported Lily through her witnessing her father abusing her mother. I am summarizing this because I respect your time. One night, while having dinner with Ryle and her mother, Lily runs into Atlas. She hasn't seen him for 9 years, and although she is happy that he seems well, she feels hurt at the distance between them. However, Lily and Ryle's happiness comes to an end when during an evening she and Ryle are to spend together. Ryle lashes out in a rage, hurting Lily. Afterward, Ryle is apologetic and Lily allows him to comfort her, feeling confused and hurt about the incident. Ryle swears that he isn't like Lily's father, who Lily has told him about. Lily threatens to leave him if it happens again and tells herself that Ryle is not like her father. So the next day at lunch, Lily sees Atlas again. Atlas sees Lily's wounded eye and Ryle's bandaged hand and comes to the correct conclusion that Ryle has assaulted Lily. When Atlas confronts Lily in the restroom, she defends Ryle. Atlas compares Lily to her mother because he saw the abuse years ago. Ryle finds them talking and Atlas attacks him, eventually throwing him out of the restaurant. Ryle asks Lily for reassurance that she isn't being unfaithful to him with Atlas. Lily stresses that she only has feelings for Ryle. Okay, so then Atlas, this guy from the past, Atlas, comes to Lily's shop the next day, apologizes for comparing her to her mother at the restaurant, brings her a gift, and leaves his phone number in case of an emergency. Okay, so then it starts talking about the teenage thing. So I'm gonna just let me interrupt myself here.
Okay, hi. I think my brain would probably be glazing over a little bit this far into the Wikipedia synopsis if I were you. So I just wanted to pop in, make sure we're all understanding what's going on with the book and the way that the thing is phrased. So the book takes place in, like, present, current day timeline, right? Like, Lily's after her father's funeral, all that stuff. But part of the book is told through Lily's old journals, and it seems to be doing both, like, you see the romance develop with this abuser guy, Ryle, and then also you get filled back in on this whole friends to lover thing from the past that's coming back around with this guy, Atlas, and you hear more about when she had initially met him. I'm fairly certain Colleen Hoover, like most romance novelists, is very, like, trope driven more than she is character driven. Obviously, I mean, okay, again, that's maybe not a fully fair criticism for me to make of her because I have not read this book, but I say that because it's my understanding of how romance in general works, right? Like, there are rules for protagonists. They have to be specific ways. They have to end the book in specific ways. Like, romance is formulaic. That does not make romance bad. It just is true about a lot of romance. And my understanding is that Colleen, though she does sometimes subvert them, she very much knows how to use, even if she does sometimes subvert or twist them, these, like, very agreed upon and liked and marketable tropes to make her books more popular. I'm not knocking the tropes themselves or necessarily the use of tropes to market them, but also, you know, I mean, Jane Austen used a lot of tropes. I've just heard enough of this book read out loud in the past, and then also I read that synopsis, so, like, I don't suspect that the tropes were employed masterfully in this case without reading it, but, you know, still, this is a book a lot of people like. I'm not sitting here saying, like, this is 100% shitty. Like, I just think it seems, as I said before, a bit Wattpad. Like, it's not a book that I have interest in reading. There's not a whole bunch left of this wiki read, but, like, I just wanted to summarize so far, you know, and I'm going to put up pictures, too, now of the characters. So, like I said before, Blake Lively is playing Lily Bloom, Justin Baldoni is playing Ryle, and then somebody named Brandon Sklner is playing Atlas, and I know who two of these people are. Okay, and we're going to talk about the movie soon, I promise, but back to the summary. For months, Atlas lived in an abandoned house with Lily providing him food, clothing, use of her home's shower, and her bedroom floor to sleep on during winter. As Lily provides him help and companionship, their relationship changes from friendship to romance. Atlas is eventually able to contact an uncle and leaves for Boston to live with him, leaving Lily heartbroken but happy that he has found a place to stay. Atlas returns on Lily's 16th birthday, promising to find her in the future. But that night, Lily's father finds Atlas with Lily in her room and attacks him, sending him to the hospital. Lily hadn't heard from Atlas since then and always felt sadness that Atlas never tried to find her like he promised. Okay, and it looks like from there, Lily and Ryle decide to get married. Ryle finds Atlas's number in Lily's phone and gets jealous and goes to leave her, and when she tries to go after him to explain, he pushes her down the stairs and then refuses responsibility for his actions. Ryle gets briefly thrown out of the apartment and pleads for forgiveness, has his sister, who is friends with Lily, intercede on his behalf. Ryle tells Lily the story of how his brother died when 6-year-old Ryle accidentally shot him. I forgot about that. I've watched videos about this book and I forgot about that. Okay. Since then, Ryle confesses he has suffered from rages. Lily is torn between her feelings for Ryle and the resemblances between her situation and the abusive situation between her father and mother. Lily tells him that she is willing to help Ryle, but that she needs to know when he needs help. Okay, so it says after the incident, Ryle appears to be improving, and then one night, again, gets jealous, threatens Lily over her relationship with Atlas, and almost sexually assaults her, hurting her when she tries to defend herself. Lily calls Atlas and leaves to the hospital, where she discovers she's pregnant. Distraught, Lily goes to stay with Atlas for several days. Ryle finds her at her shop after, but tells her that he is leaving for England. Atlas admits to Lily that he did look for her after he finished his first tour, but found her happy and didn't think his life was good enough for her back then. He takes her back to her apartment and confesses he has feelings for her. He makes clear that he understands she is busy with her own situation now and only hopes that someday a relationship between them can be possible. As time passes, Lily feels torn about telling both Alyssa and her mother about her pregnancy. She feels alone and in need of their support, but she is frightened that they will convince her to take Ryle back.
Alyssa, however, suspects that something has happened between Lily and Ryle and confronts Lily. Relieved, Lily discusses the abuse that she suffered as well as her pregnancy. Sister urges Lily to leave Ryle, and when Lily finally talks to her own mother, she is encouraged to leave. Ryle then returns from his 3 months in England and learns about Lily's pregnancy. It says he wants her forgiveness, but Lily keeps him at a distance. Eventually, she lets him participate as a father, helping her during the final months of the pregnancy. Despite accepting his help, Lily refuses to make a decision about their relationship before the birth. After Lily gives birth to a girl, she realizes she doesn't want her baby to grow up witnessing abuse. She decides that she will divorce Ryle to break the pattern of domestic violence. 11 months later, she runs into Atlas and indicates that she is ready to have a relationship with him.
Okay. Some stuff to say about this too, but again, like before, I don't know how justified I am in saying it, because again, I have not read this book. Maybe that whole she explicitly leaves because it's a girl and it's worse to let a girl grow up watching her mother be abused than a boy is this summarizer's inference and not explicit, maybe? And I'm not going super deep into my own personal, like, knee-jerk critiques, but I did read a few other people's feminist analysis of It Ends With Us. In fact, here's one from somebody named Eliza Sullivan, who wrote for F Magazine a couple of years back.
Hoover gets a lot wrong in this book. While her intentions with the novel show a heart of gold, her execution misses the mark almost entirely, despite her personal familial experience with the subject. There are too many authorial moments where she denounces domestic violence, but at the same time defends abusers, using traumatic backstories to explain Ryle's outbursts. I can see and understand critics' worries when they state that young people will read this and think dangerous romance is the first definition of love. There are heavy moral mistakes in seemingly using domestic violence as a plot pusher for a romance arc. But Hoover does get one thing very right. Victims are not perfect. More times than not, they will make the wrong decision. Despite the many red flags, Lily continues to try to understand and explain away Ryle's actions and has convinced herself he is not a monster. He's only human. The conversation around victims seems to halt at the idea that after a few times, the victim is at fault for what occurs, and sympathy diminishes. I very frequently hear the on paper argument. If a victim wrote down everything on paper that they had put up with and endured, it would read stupid. Except victims aren't pieces of paper. Victims are human, and they are making split decisions in near impossible situations. So yes, Lily's decision to have Ryle still involved in her child's life is stupid. The multiple chances she gives him are stupid. The thought process behind ever trying to help an abuser change is stupid. It's all very ignorant, and that's the point. This dangerous naivete is extremely difficult to navigate and escape, but perhaps I give Hoover too much credit with her character intentions. I do worry for young readers who might not have the maturity and experience of older ones to conclude that while this is marketed as a romance novel to push sales, it's anything but. I'll end with this. This conversation you and I are having should not end with us, and it sure as hell should not end with Colleen Hoover. Keep talking. Also on this topic, this is a note from the Nuance Corner from that bookseller bestie that I mentioned earlier, because we talked about this and every other video I make while I make them. And here's what they said. Raising flags about what is and isn't appropriate to be in print and how that might affect young women, because it's always young women we're worried about, a whole other can of worms, is moralist garbage, and using it as a reason to dislike It Ends With Us or Colleen Hoover or any trend in romance as a whole is ridiculous. Reading something you're unprepared for is a rite of passage for any nerdy little kid who reads too much. It's part of learning your own taste and also your own boundaries. The difference that comes into play with this and any other thing that takes up on Book Talk is that the 12-year-olds asking their moms to buy this for them are rarely reading on a regular basis and haven't learned how to process a story yet. They're looking to buy into a trend, because that's all TikTok ever wants anyone to do. Fortunately, I doubt any of them actually read it, and even if they did, Colleen Hoover is not going to be responsible for the youngest of Gen Z and the oldest of Gen Alpha landing themselves in abusive relationships with douchebag surgeons or whatever. The moral panic people try to raise about this is a problem of kids on social media and uninterested parents who aren't checking in with what their kids are doing. And before we get into the drama surrounding the cast and everything else that's about to overshadow the actual plot of the movie that I just laid out,
Colleen Hoover actually has also had backlash about something else before with regards to It Ends With Us, which I had absolutely forgotten about until another article I read in my research from Slate reminded me of it. I don't have a ton to say about this particular controversy. It just feels worth kind of adding to the pile and gesturing towards, right? You can find an article about it linked in the description below from CNN, of all places, where Colleen had to make a statement because she had to apologize after her publisher had been, like, moving forward, like they were going to release a coloring book based on It Ends With Us. Like, the domestic violence plot that I just told you about. It was going to be, like, an adult coloring book based on that, I guess, maybe with quotes and stuff. I agree with the decision to cancel that, yeah. But also, like, Colleen apologized. The coloring book didn't come out. And even if it did, it would have been, like, a bit gauche for my taste, but I don't think inherently harmful or problematic. Like, people like adult coloring books. The overlap, actually, between adult coloring books and, like, romance novel readers is probably pretty big. But I also do think that the backlash was justified. And the Slate article that reminded me about the coloring book backlash is also really, really good. It's by Charles Upton, and it's called The Backlash Against America's Most Popular Novelist is Way Less Satisfying Than I'd Hoped. The article itself is largely a really thoughtful defense of, like, dark romance in general and of books that give us perspectives of somebody being abused or of an abuser and why that's, like, not specifically harmful. And it also makes some really interesting arguments about how a lot of criticisms of It Ends With Us fell flat. To hear Charles explain it, nobody really seems to know exactly how to criticize this book. Is it harmful because it's teaching a bad lesson, or is it a bad book because it is didactic? I like this description of it in the article where they say that it's essentially like a paint by numbers of how to leave an abusive relationship. That does feel pretty accurate to me. And in that case, yeah, I do agree with the author of this Slate article that we can agree that this book is not necessarily good and maybe should not be lauded the way that it is, and also that it's not fair to say that it is both didactic and also setting bad examples if the thing that it is being didactic about is how to leave an abusive relationship. And Charles also posits that the marketing of the book is part of the reason why it draws so much criticism towards itself. The love triangle that is actually just an abusive relationship, and that it's a romance novel, but it bucks the industry convention of they get together and live happily ever after at the end. And I do want to move into talking about the movie now, especially the marketing around the movie, since that was largely what made me interested in making a video about this in the first place. But before we do, I think that what Charles said about the marketing of the book itself is a helpful transition into that and into what I'm about to describe. And in terms of, like, the almost romantic comedy coded branding of this movie as it's coming out. So I'm going to read one more thing here before we move into the trailer and press and all of the rumors that I have seen circulating. It Ends With Us is marketed as a romantic love triangle between a young woman named Lily, her yuppie surgeon love interest Ryle, and her childhood friend Atlas. This presentation is intentionally misleading. The bulk of the book is about Lily and Ryle's relationship, which becomes abusive by degrees, slowly enough that when it finally hits you, oh, this is a book about domestic violence. It's a legitimate shock. Ryle's charisma and domineering nature are initially not all that far off from the typical characteristics of a specific type of romance hero, so while the red flags were clear enough, the false promise of genre romance, that this will work out in the end, framed Ryle's early behavior, if not in a sympathetic light, at least a wait-and-see one. It Ends With Us, frankly, doesn't work without this deception. The Ryle reveal is the emotional manipulation that gives this book a sense of heft. Without it, it is simply a didactic story, a paint-by-number of how to recognize and respond to abuse. I really like that framing where the book needs the deception to function. I think that makes a lot of sense and is a really helpful way of explaining it to somebody who has not read it, like me. How many times am I going to say that in this video? That's part of why I'm unsure how much we can blame this odd marketing as being because of one camp or the other in this drama we're talking about today. Like, I think it's probably how whoever made this movie would have marketed it if they had a chance to, regardless of whether or not one of the leads was married to Deadpool. But obviously, then, with the lead being married to Deadpool, like, you just do the superhero tie in stuff. Like, it probably wouldn't have been specifically superheroes, but we live in IP land and everything is a crossover. It's exhausting. I don't like it either, but like it's just the world we live in. I guess before we get more into that, let's talk a little bit more about that cast of beautiful people I showed you earlier. Blake Lively, everybody knows. She was Serena van der Woodsen on Gossip Girl. She's been in other movies since then, and I'm going to do research, but I haven't previously been aware of Ryan Reynolds being extremely involved in them the way that he seems to have been involved in It Ends With Us. I could genuinely just be wrong on that, though, so I will cut something in if I am. And yeah, her husband is Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool. Like I said, you know who Ryan Reynolds is. They got married on a plantation, which is bad. Like, I really don't know how you book a plantation for your wedding and don't think, like, maybe we should just do this on the beach or in a church or something. But they claimed as of an apology that Ryan Reynolds did a few years ago that they just found a venue on Pinterest and booked it and had no idea what the history of the location was. Dumb white people stuff. I mean, I neither think that there is a clear and like obvious hero to root for in this story or that there is a clear villain to despise. So if you've been watching this and thinking like, oh, her tone is a little bit bouncy for all of that, it probably is. It's because we're mostly talking about like all of this celebrity drama regarding the movie, and that stuff really does not matter a whole lot. Like, the drama that we're talking about is not extremely important, huge scale things, and it's not people who I feel very particularly defensive of either. So, like, we're just chatting. I do have my suspicions, though, of who in the long run is probably going to come out of this as, like, a long-term villain, but I could be wrong. We'll see. Our other major player in this drama is Justin Baldoni. He plays Ryle. The guy who plays Atlas really does not figure into all of this from anything I'm seeing. Justin Baldoni has been attached to this movie since 2019. He's also the one who optioned the film rights in the first place from Colleen Hoover. So about that marketing, in my opinion, it's not just the presence of Ryan Reynolds on the press tour that makes it clear like how much of a driving force in all of this Blake Lively's celebrity status is. I say that also partially because they used a Taylor Swift song in the trailer. I mean, I could be wrong. I would love feedback on this. If you think Taylor Swift would have signed off on having My Tears Ricochet in the trailer for this movie, if anybody other than Blake Lively was in it, let me know. I kind of think it was payback for name-dropping all of their kids in Betty. Like, I think it was like a You Owe Me One kind of situation where she was like, yeah, put it in that. And then because she let them do that, she also had to make that corny post about the Deadpool movie when it came out. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments what your read is on that. Like, do you think that that would be in the trailer either way? I don't watch a lot of movie trailers. Like, are there a lot of movie trailers with Taylor Swift songs in them? I feel like no, right? I'm definitely not the only person who finds the marketing of this movie odd. You can just go on Twitter and search It Ends With Us marketing and you'll find a lot of people making similar points to what I'm saying here. And we can also take it from an actual journalist for the Rolling Stone. This is an article from C.T. Jones, and it is called, How Do You Market a Domestic Violence Movie? Not Like It Ends With Us. There's been promotional material about Lively as the next great movie star. Shiny trailers have included a popular Taylor Swift ballad. There was even a Century City pop-up mall experience for fans, recreating Lily's kooky flower shop as a photo opportunity. But this glossy marketing campaign is proving that Hollywood hasn't found a respectful way to market movies about domestic violence. Even worse, It Ends With Us isn't even trying. Since its conception and success, It Ends With Us has straddled a tenuous line between the gravity of its subject and its widespread appeal.
something that the film seems to have taken on in its quest to become a faithful adaptation. But what has been glaringly obvious about the promotion cycle is that the studio is prioritizing selling tickets for a love story by ignoring the message of domestic violence awareness at its core. The dark themes of the book have been glossed over in favor of fan-friendly pop-ups and activations, like photo calls, virtual commemorative boutiques, and scavenger hunts in New York and LA. It's a paint job, one that's been taken on largely by the film's lead. Another point on the Ryan Reynolds of it all here. Ryan Reynolds is credited as a writer on It Ends With Us, and from what I've heard, he and Blake Lively may have ended up with a significant amount of editing power after Justin Baldoni was finished directing. But also, it's extremely hard to pin down what has any merit of all of that and what's just people making stuff up. And all of the things that I'm about to tell you about have had so much meaning assigned to them and could very much be nothing. But here are the things so far that have made people speculate on a rift in the cast, and that this is Don't Worry Darling marketing rollout 2.0. Number 1. Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively aren't following each other on social media, according to reports. Colleen Hoover apparently follows Blake Lively, but not Justin. Again, as I said earlier, like all of this could mean nothing. Number 2, at the premiere, rather than taking pictures together and walking the red carpet together the way that the leading couple of a movie typically does, Justin and Blake posed with their respective spouses, and in Blake's case with Ryan and also Hugh Jackman, which is another reason that I'm saying this all feels like it's kind of screaming cross-promotion with the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. It's that, largely, in addition to just like some other little press junket moments. Justin also seems to be missing pretty conspicuously from the cast photos that I'm seeing from that night. That one's a little bit harder to explain for me than why he and Blake wouldn't walk and take pictures together, like, coupley, because I understand why they wouldn't do that when it's like, okay, we're doing domestic violence, so we don't need to, like, cuddle up on the red carpet, but I don't know. Number 3, also just from what I've seen, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't seen the actual introduction. This is just what I've read. At the premiere, Colleen and Blake were the ones who introduced the movie and not Justin. Again, even though Justin is the one who's been attached to the project for longer, I really could see them just having made the decision, like, okay, we're kind of selling this as like a woman empowerment thing, so we're just going to have the women go up there. I could see that. But number 4, and the only one on this list that really for sure sells me, and again, another one that could mean nothing, is this masterful little evasion from Jenny Slate when she was asked on the red carpet what it was like to work with Justin.
Talk to me, what was that like, having him be director but also scene partner?
I mean, what an intense job! Like to have to do so many things. I just found myself being like, "Wow, I really just want to have one job at once." Like yeah. And in fact, I've often felt that way. Like I really like writing, and I like it so much, and it's special to be able to be a writer. But like, yeah, I was looking around, just being like, "I'm good with just acting." I love it. I just want to do it. I feel like I've only begun.
Kind of a dodge, right? So, of course, all of that was more than enough to get gears turning on the internet, and turn they have. I've watched some interviews with the cast, I've read a bunch of write-ups on the situation, seen some of the marketing materials for the movie, and now, though I have no idea what's going on, and I have no particular insider knowledge, and I don't even necessarily have a solid take on what I think happened, I would love to talk to you about it. That's what the rest of this video is going to be. I am having to do a little bit of extrapolation to make the pro-Blake side because I am seeing more people reporting on the pro-Justin side of things, but I'm not in either of these camps. I'm just telling you about the camps that I am observing as I dive into this rabbit hole. So let's start with Camp Blake, just because that's the one that I am kind of filling out a little bit more, and then I have more to say about Camp Justin, even though I don't know for sure how real those rumors are. And let me just say that that is ignoring the possibility that none of this is real at all, and also that none of this is real at all and that there's no drama, and also another distinct possibility, none of this is real at all and it's being manufactured to create buzz around the movie. I don't think I believe that last one. Like, I think it might be true that there's nothing really going on, but I don't think that I believe that this is a big stunt around the movie. I do kind of think the Don't Worry Darling cast played into it on purpose, or at least wanted to, but this, I think, more likely is people who have different visions for a project not having a amazing time working together on that project. So, let's look at this with a Blake friendly lens first, because I'm assuming a lot of the internet is not going to continue doing that for very long. I think the pro Blake narrative is probably the most Occam's razory one of the bunch. Right, it's a pretty simple argument. Yes, Blake Lively signed on to the development of It Ends With Us a few years later than Justin Baldoni did, but maybe she really connected with the project. Maybe she really likes it and feels passionately about it and has, like, things in her own life that made her resonate deeply with this project. That is a lot of what acting is, right? Like, people connect to their roles. Just because Justin was there 3 years earlier doesn't necessarily mean anything. There's like a lot of I mean, we'll get to this more in the Justin section, but I'm going to be presenting it more like I'm on his side, so that's why I'm talking about this now. A lot of people are acting like just because Justin Baldoni was connected to this project first and is like the director and executive producer, that like he then should have remained the primary person marketing it, even though Blake Lively very much is the star. This is a movie with like a female protagonist. I would understand why Justin may be very present in marketing in a timeline where it was going a little bit differently. He does do some marketing still, but like when he does, it's like off on his own. That makes sense to me from like the guy playing the abusive lead. Like, it makes sense to me, as I said before, the same as him and Blake not taking coupley photos on the red carpet. Like, he's playing the abusive lead. Maybe he's trying to, like, look at that narrative or whatever for the marketing. I'm not really sure. A lot of the anti-Blake Lively sentiment, though, is essentially, like, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds came in and took over this movie. There are rumors, which I'm not sure how substantiated they are because I know very little about Hollywood or anything, but the rumors that I'm seeing circulating that are like leading people to draw these conclusions, which is why I think this is still a useful conversation. Like, I'm hoping that the fact that I'm like making it clear that this may not be true makes it like I'm not giving you tabloid gossip just for the sake of like, oh, I know these things, but more because like I think these narratives that spring up around these things that people are telling each other is interesting, and unfortunately, whether or not the thing itself is true, it is what people are making assumptions based about right now when it comes to their perceptions of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds and of Justin Baldoni. Either way around. But those rumors are saying that there was a screening of a cut that Justin Baldoni did that did better with private audiences than the cut that came out that is the one that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds had a lot of control over. And Blake has talked a lot about the amount of like work that she and Ryan Reynolds put into like retooling the movie. I mentioned before he has writing credits. She said this in an interview.
We help each other. We work together so much. The iconic rooftop scene in this movie, my husband actually wrote it. Nobody knows that, but you know. But he wrote it. He works on everything I do. I work on everything he does. So his wins, his celebrations are mine, and mine are his. I mean, he's all over this film.
And Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman is not all over this film, but he's all over this premiere, and I'm grateful for it.
Anyway, this is also an example, like, we can read this very neutrally, or we can read it in a more sinister way, and, like, we do the more sinister read to women very often, right? Another reason why, like, I want to start off by being, like, she could just be being an actress. She could just be marketing herself off of this movie, and I think that's extremely likely. I think it's the most likely one. She seems fairly passionate about this project. I mean, I thought that she was going to be doing a lot worse in the press stuff about it than she seems to have been based on the way people talk about it on Twitter. Like, yes, she does talk about her hair care line because she just launched a shampoo or whatever, but she doesn't strike me as unaware of, like, the severity of the source material or the fact that this is something that she has been, like, told by people who have been, like, very deeply resonated by this story. Hey, I love this story. This thing means a lot to me. No level of, like, oh, maybe this book wasn't very good takes away the fact that, like, it can do good and tangible difference in people's lives. Like, again, I don't personally like Colleen Hoover. I think it's awesome if people really like her books. I don't think that people should be being handed them as a child and told, like, this is romantic, the way that Book Talk kind of does, as my bestie pointed out in that earlier section. But, like, I don't think that we should be saying that books and movies shouldn't exist where, like, women who are going through terrible things can see themselves in, or women who have been through terrible things can see themselves in and see, like, a narrative where they're portrayed as, like, the hero, right? And I do think a lot of this comes down to, like, Colleen Hoover, as we've already mentioned, she kind of bucks industry tradition. It's odd by standards that this book doesn't actually end with Atlas and Lily together and just with her, like, you know, leaving the door open for the possibility or whatever. But while that is strange for, like, a romance novel, because romance has, like, very clearly defined rules and lists, like, very clearly defined rules, you can actually find them fairly easily online. A book with this kind of plot, thinking about, like, the plot that we went over in the first section of this video, if I told you that plot, or a version of it, and instead of telling you that it was a romance novel, I told you that it was literary fiction, nobody would care. Nobody would be moralizing about it at all. And I watched the trailers for this movie. I understand why some people are saying that it looks like a romance movie, but I also kind of understood that it looked like it was a movie about domestic violence. Like, it looked like it maybe looks like a movie that would have come out in 2012 when I was first, like, tumblr.edu teaching myself about feminism as a little homeschooled child, where the plot at that time would have been like, oh, she makes him better, and I would have been like, this is so problematic, this literally looks like it's a trailer for a movie about an abusive relationship. But, like, when you know that it's a trailer for a movie about an abusive relationship, you can tell. When you, like, hear the sad Taylor Swift song, you can tell, like, I'm of two minds. But, like, even for, like, serious dramatic movies on press tours and stuff, like, I do think people, women, I don't know why I said people, I think women get asked about their hair on their press tour no matter what their movie is about. So, whatever, Blake Lively has shampoo, I don't really care. But the thing is, like, she might be passionate about this movie. She might just be using it to advance her career. And the thing is it's also very possible for her to be, like, passionate about this movie and also passionate about using it to advance her career and her brand. And I do feel like the collective family brand of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds has been something that the two of them have been putting a lot of stock into recently. I don't know if, I assume everybody else has noticed that. Like, they're all over the place. Ryan especially, but, like, Blake too a little bit. It seems like, in my opinion, there has been a fairly recent and increasingly high-profile push to, like, make them known when you think of celebrity power couples. I mean, I googled famous celebrity couples for this video to see who else I could even reference, and Blake and Ryan were the top one. I know they haven't been married that long, but I feel like even just a few years ago that wouldn't have been the case, right? Also, though, I've been Googling, like, a lot of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds related things while I research this video, so probably Google is just tracking me. And, like, it's probably a pretty successful attempt, too. I mean, not just because of their SEO, but, like, it just seems like it's been successful. We're going to talk about these arguments against Blake Lively later. I mean, you've already heard one of them, you've heard the other ones I've already referenced, but in that article from CT that Blake Lively is primarily the one putting the paint job on this movie, I don't know that I agree or disagree with that. Like, I think Blake Lively is kind of just a happy, bubbly actress doing a happy, bubbly press tour for a movie that would have ended up with, like, a less than somber press tour no matter who was playing Lily Blossom Bloom. That is her full name. I did not know that when I recorded the first part, or else I would have mentioned it then. And I'm not saying happily, bubbly actress either, like, because I love that, or because I think it's, like, a derisive way to explain her. Like, I just kind of think that that's part of the brand. But again, for as much as people will have you think that she's never seriously engaging with the content matter of the movie, she has in, like, literally the first interview that I watched her do about this. So there are two different sets of rumors I'm about to get into here, and again, I haven't seen either one of these directly confirmed, but check the description, because in the coming weeks, if more comes out, I will add links to that there. There have been, from what I've seen, vague mentions that Justin Baldoni made Blake Lively feel uncomfortable on set, and I have not seen any descriptions of what or how or why that happened. It's getting offered up as a plausible explanation for the rift. That could be because it's a rumor mill thing that's going around, or it could be because somebody wants to feel like they have an explanation for the not following each other on social media thing and not taking pictures together at the premiere, right? Just real quick, interrupting myself from earlier, I said that there were no specifics. According to a page 6 insider, which still doesn't say what the specifics were, it says that Blake was made to feel uncomfortable about her postpartum body. I just wanted to throw that in there because I said there are no specifics. This is still not very specific, but it's slightly more specific than no specifics implies, right?
Okay, just another note here about Blake Lively being made to feel uncomfortable about her postpartum body. I do want to note that page 6 insider does not specifically say that it was Justin who made her feel uncomfortable. And I also, as I have been reading articles about this movie for this video, I noticed that people are talking a lot about how there was, I guess, discourse about Blake Lively looking frumpy when there were initially pictures coming out of filming the movie a couple years ago. I've seen some of these tweets. I'm putting one of them on screen right now. I do think that it's possible that it is, like, that was maybe said in reference to discourse around her. Like, frumpy is definitely a word that I feel like would make somebody feel uncomfortable about their postpartum body, but also there are obviously a lot of other things that could happen to do that, and a lot of other things that could happen to, like, explain other stuff that would make people feel uncomfortable. So take all of that, do what you will with it.
There are also the rumors, as I mentioned earlier, with the director's cut being different from the final cut. There are those rumors that are not exactly being shared in a woohoo pro-Blake kind of way, that she and Ryan Reynolds thought the movie, if done correctly, would get her an Oscar nomination, which is kind of a hilarious concept. Again, the character's name is Lily Blossom Bloom, and she's a florist. Like, I do think that's very funny, and I struggle to take it seriously. Like, I feel like those two know enough about the movie industry to not think that this movie would get her an Oscar nod. Like, I feel like, oh, she thinks that's gonna get her an Oscar is just, like, something that people say about women when they act in movies, but I could be wrong. This movie does not, to me, feel like Oscar bait. Like, it feels like canned dog food slop that the Oscars won't look at. But I could be wrong. I might eat these words after I see it or after the Oscars come out. I don't know. So, yeah, the Blake Lively friendly argument here is that she's doing her job. She doesn't seem to be disrespectful of the source material of the book or the people who have gone through serious things. She doesn't feel, like, dramatically off from the tone of the original marketing for Colleen Hoover's books or the way that this movie is being sold. This is a romance novel that had a coloring book about to come out about it, right? I will say Blake doing interviews with the other leading man and not with Justin is something I could totally ignore in isolation. Yeah, they paired off the two that are going to be the subject in the sequel movie, like, of course. But also, it does kind of tie into the maybe something happened theory. Blake has not said, it feels important for me to point out here, I have not heard, like, Blake herself in any interviews or anything talk about that whole Justin making her uncomfortable thing. I would have nowhere near as easy of a time presenting the pro-Justin argument in the next section of this video if she had given any details about that or if I knew it was coming directly from her. But if something did happen and he did make her feel uncomfortable, that does tie into, like, oh, okay, so Ryan Reynolds is there because he's, like, being, like, supportive for her at her premiere, both in, like, the Hollywood partner way and also, like, maybe she just, like, wanted a buffer, and that's also why Hugh Jackman came. I also kind of just believe Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are genuinely friends, but maybe I'm naive. Like, it just seems like they're really enjoying all of that. I don't think Deadpool is a movie I'm interested in watching, but, like, somebody's having fun. And it might just be that, like, that's the opposite. Like, right, like, Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are really getting along and enjoying their press tour, and then also Blake and Justin, for whatever reason, even if just because they disagreed about how the movie should be cut in those final director's versions, like, did not have that. They just had, like, a difficult relationship, maybe, allegedly, apparently, based on rumors, based on nothing. But also, now that people are, like, mad at Blake Lively based on rumors, they are, like, also giving her a lot of heat on Twitter for stuff like her self-styled outfits on red carpets and stuff. I don't know. I don't know a lot about fashion. I mostly think Blake Lively's outfits are cute. I think it's nice that people get to wear clothes that they like rather than having to just be, like, a living clothing rack for designers. I also, though, did agree with that one tweet about how she dressed the actress who played her younger self as her younger self. Like, it was funny. Like, probably Blake Lively wants to be a stylist for other people, too, and not just for herself. And I don't know enough about fashion. Like, I don't really think she's there. But also, if she just encouraged everybody else, like, you can just still go shopping like a normal person and wear what you shopped for, that could be huge. Not like a normal person, as in the stuff that she's wearing is, like, anything that any normal person could ever afford, but like a normal person, like normal people get to pick out their shirts. I like this shirt. I made this shirt. It used to be a dress. Like I couldn't do that and then wear it in public if I was like a celebrity usually. So like whatever. I don't care that she's her own stylist. Again, like with the whole happy bubbly actress thing, Blake Lively's whole thing, her whole being her own stylist thing, her whole personality, her couple branding with Ryan Reynolds, it might work for you or it just might not. You might, like me, be like fairly neutral unless you occasionally really like an outfit you see her wear or whatever. Like sometimes she really does knock it out of the park. And in defense of the whole hair care line thing, like I feel like her wavy hair has also been part of the brand for a long time, so it makes sense that a hair care brand rollout would eventually happen. Like it makes sense, if not for this particular movie, then for her celebrity on a personal brand level, right? So, I mean, yeah, if the people are asking her questions about her hair, she's gonna answer it. I understand why people think that it's like tacky for her to like promote, but also, you know, it's just how a lot of these things work, again, unfortunately. She has a whole celebrity brand that very much does not only rely around It Ends With Us, whereas It Ends With Us seems to increasingly rely more around Blake's celebrity status, which is like making people mad at Blake in a way that I don't personally find fair. However, if we step our toes outside of Camp Blake, and we look back in and we see how much this movie that was going to exist back in 2019 when Justin originally optioned it now revolves around her, I mean, it is a little weird, right? Bearing in mind that I would not be doing these defenses of Justin if I had something more to go on about why Blake was uncomfortable with him on set. And, you know, like, if something averse happened, I'll feel dumb about this, and I'll make a follow-up video and tell you why I was wrong. Let's talk about the Justin Baldoni side of things. And I want to do that because if I hadn't known, like if I didn't learn just while I was researching for this video that Justin was the one who optioned the rights for this movie directly from Colleen, I would have probably referred to this movie a bit derisively as like a Blake Lively vessel. So that's a little interesting for something that wasn't originally going to be that, right? So, what's the Camp Justin narrative? So the Camp Justin narrative goes basically that Blake Lively and by extension Ryan Reynolds' hopes for Blake to get an Oscar nod are not just like some errant daydream, but in fact an entire grand conspiracy. What I have read and also seen on TikTok posited essentially that the idea was that they would let Justin retain credit as the director just in case the movie flopped, and then that Blake and Ryan would like somehow try to wrest even more credit than they were already getting from just being producers if the movie did well, which the movie does seem to have done extremely well so far. Like pin it on him if it's a flop and then snatch it out from under him if it's a success. So I've seen people saying, based on the fact that Colleen Hoover follows Blake Lively on social media and not Justin, who was the one who wrote to her to initially option the movie all those years ago, that like proves the point that Blake and Ryan buddied up to Colleen Hoover and got her to tell the studios that they had to do the version of the movie that Blake and Ryan wanted that had scored less well with audiences. And whatever cut that is that Blake and Ryan did, the assumption that this all carries with it, right, is that that has less of whatever Justin's original vision was. And, you know, on Justin's original vision here, like I said earlier, that the internet would have you believe that Blake is never being serious on this press tour. That's because it kind of seems like Justin is never not being serious on this press tour. So it is a very easy comparison to make when you're not intentionally trying to be a little bit defensive of Blake. Justin seems to be primarily serious. He talks about how the book was very intimidating for him to adapt, like, as a man and as somebody who wants to, like, bring awareness to sexual violence and domestic assault.
I think as a man, I'm always going to come with my own biases. And it's one of the reasons I was afraid to direct this movie, let alone act in it. And I wanted to make sure this film always had a female gaze, and I was never putting myself into it. But one of the things that I think is very easy to say, especially for us men, is when we maybe talk to somebody who's in this situation, or we read a book, or we hear a news story, the question that's always asked is, why did she stay? And that's the wrong question.
Yeah.
What we need to be asking ourselves is, why do men harm?
Yes.
And that was the big thing for me. And what I've learned more and more and more of is, like, you know, these women who experience this every single day, there's real love there. You know, there's charm, there's charisma, there's passion, there's this belief that they can be better. And it's not so simple. So our friends at No More, I'm wearing their pin right now, they were the ones who really worked with me to help me make this film as truthful as possible and hopefully do justice to
I
all
just
the women
like
who
just
experience this.
And all of this, like, makes it seem like this cut that we don't have that did better with these audiences would have maybe borne out a lot of that more, right? The narrative really suits him because, and I'm summarizing here, like, Justin has not said this, Justin's representatives have not said this. When I say Camp Blake and Camp Justin, I mean people who are defensive of Blake and people who are defensive of Justin. The Camp Justin narrative is essentially that Justin Baldoni had some somber, serious, beautiful vision for this film. And then it got taken over by Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, who invested a bunch of money into it, and they report, I don't know based on exactly what, that at one point Blake threatened to walk away if she and Ryan did not get, like, the level of creative control that they got. So again, this narrative would maintain that Blake and Ryan have turned Colleen and the studio and the rest of the cast who weren't taking pictures with Justin at the premiere and all of that, like the whole Jenny Slate thing, that Blake and Ryan have, like, turned everybody against Justin. Justin hasn't really commented about all of this at all, except, so he made this comment about how he thinks that Blake Lively is probably a better option to direct the sequel than he is, and that she's probably ready for it now. I'll put it on screen. This comment, of course, has fed the rumors even more, because if he was going to say something coded that implied that Blake had come in and taken over his movie, like, that's exactly what he would say, right? But that's also exactly what somebody who is, like, less of a big deal in the next movie and doesn't really want to, like, direct a movie where they're going from main character to, like, bit character, side character, co-parent, you know? Maybe? I don't know. I don't know that this narrative that the movie got, like, stolen out from under Justin is either untrue or true. And maybe Justin did have intentions for a better and more serious movie. But I also kind of think, like, he definitely could have optioned something better if those were his intentions. Like, he could have optioned something that was written and then received a bit less criticism for the way that it brought attention to domestic violence. And for that reason, I do wonder if it's a little bit less, like, the initial driving intention behind making this movie was a little bit less, this particular story and the way it's told is so important and I need to make it a movie so everybody sees it, and a little bit more, holy shit, this book is so popular, I have to be the one to get the movie rights. You know, and I don't know that for sure. I just say that because I feel like if his intention was to make something very serious and meaningful, he maybe would have pulled, like, a more somber literary fiction pull rather than a romance novel that's actually a story about a domestic abuse. But also I'm aware, even as I say that, that is a deeply pretentious point for me to make, so sorry. Justin Baldoni is certainly, at least as of right now, while it ends with us, is just coming out definitely more interested than Blake Lively is in centering his entire brand around advocacy. I noticed he has a link to the No More organization in his bio, and I'm seeing people who have followed him more closely than I have in the years since I last saw him when Jane the Virgin ended, who have said that, like, for years now, his brand has been about, like, unlearning toxic masculinity, male fragility, that, like, he's already been talking about stuff like this prior to this movie. I don't think that this means that it's impossible for him to have ever made Blake Lively feel uncomfortable, though, or that he didn't create an uncomfortable environment, or maybe if nobody was talking to him at the red carpet, like, maybe that's just for other reasons. But I will say, again, because I'm pretty sure that this is a situation that's going to continue to develop, I am keeping my eye on whether or not I feel like that seems genuine or like a potential cover, because some people do very much use that as a cover. I don't have enough reasons to be suspicious of Justin currently to say, like, this reminds me of when the guy from Catfish was doing this same thing, but, like, there is definitely an appeal sometimes for a man who is less kind to women in his day-to-day life to brand himself as somebody who, like, cares very much about, like, justice towards women. I don't know. My assumption here, as I already mentioned, I think Blake Lively is going to end up being the one who comes out of this with more, like, negative press sticking to her. Unless there are actual allegations about Justin, beyond the cast not seeming to like him very much and that apparent isolation at the premiere. I could be wrong. Maybe if the movie is a huge success, the fact that she was in and produced this very popular movie will matter more than this, like, rumor mill circulating around it. And the narrative of her, like, being difficult and having, like, come in and taken over the movie isn't going to take root the way that I kind of feel like it's about to. But I also feel like no matter how commercially successful this movie is, no matter how much money it makes, it's bound to stir up the same discourse that has already been happening about the book, about marketing something, about domestic violence and abuse as a romance, and, like, what that does and what it says and what it teaches. People have already been having these conversations about the narrative in this book and whether or not it does that narrative well and does justice to the people it's trying to help with that narrative. And then now, the movie came out, there's a version of the movie. I don't know how good that version is. I don't think it looks very good from the trailer. But that version is going to stir that discourse back up. And now there is a secret version that, like, does not exist unless we get, like, a secret, unless it ends up being like a Snyder Cut kind of thing, right? There's a version that doesn't exist, that is being promised to people as, like, well, if Justin Baldoni had remained in control, there would have been a good version of the It Ends With Us movie, and it's because of Blake that doesn't exist. That's what I see happening. Like, That's So Raven future style, like, that's what I think is going to happen. I think this little narrative of, like, oh, this silly lady movie would have been better if they would have simply let the man be the one to make it, is, like, the one that is going to beat out a lot of the other discourse around this. I hope I'm wrong. But, you know, like, also, he's still very much credited as the director, which is why all of this, like, Blake took it over thing is kind of making me confused. I guess, final answer here, now that you know everything that I know, my perspective is that this would have probably not been a very good movie no matter who would have ended up having final creative control over the cut at the end, and that somebody, like, who is a producer and has credit as a producer cannot meaningfully steal a movie from, like, somebody who is a director and has credit for the director in terms of getting credit for it. Like, they can have changed the movie, but that's still a movie that everybody is going to know Baldoni as the director of, no matter how many times Blake Lively says Ryan Reynolds wrote the rooftop scene, right? Like, IMDb, it says Justin Baldoni is the director. On the commercials, it says Justin Baldoni is the director. Like, I just don't think that they meaningfully can steal all the credits, no matter how annoyed people are that, you know, Ryan Reynolds wrote scenes for the movie. Which does, I mean, like, he's it's not really in line with any of his regular writing credits, if we look. But maybe he did a good job, I don't know, I haven't seen it. I would love to know what you think, though, especially if you've read or seen, or both, ideally, It Ends With Us, or also the sequel. If you've read the sequel, I didn't read the synopsis for the sequel. How much is Ryle around in the sequel, even? Like, do we think Justin Baldoni is even going to be in the second movie? Does he need to be? How does all of that work out? I don't know. I would love to hear about it. If he does drop out, the speculation is going to go wild again. But, you know... That's what I've got so far for you. If you were hoping somebody could explain it to you without taking like a really hardline stance for one person or the other here, that's it. That's what I've got. I am sure that my opinion will change as more information comes out, and I'm 98% sure that more information will come out. I have a feeling this will be a video I follow up on, but I love you all and I love talking to you, so I wanted to talk to you about this while it was still pretty fresh. If you're interested in more videos from me, please consider subscribing. I try to upload about once a week, and if you're interested in even more than that, I also have a Patreon where I upload 2 extra videos every month. You can find links in my description for the Patreon, for my coffee, for a GoFundMe situation I currently have that I'm extremely grateful to everybody who has helped me with. Thank you so much to everybody who has helped me through the Patreon, through the GoFundMe, through the coffee, or by watching, sharing, commenting on my videos. I love you all so much. There's almost 5,000 of us. Thank you so much. If there are other things going on that you would like to hear about from me, please let me know in the comments, in my Google form, wherever. I love you. I already said that. Have a great day.